We'll start streaming. And I think we're live.
Excellent.
Are we live?
We are live.
So I need to screen share, don't I? Something, even if it's wrong. Well, I want to welcome Russell Stroud and Paul. I haven't been given permission to mention Paul's last name, but Russell is kind of a public figure.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So Russell's the news director at 92.7. Isn't that the proper term?
Let me look at my business card. Yes.
But I have always been impressed with Russell after listening to the radio station for about a year now, and I've met you in person. And it's funny how when you meet a fellow person who you think has great philosophy in their life, it's funny how you're kind of attracted to their thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the
The general aura.
same with Paul. Paul, I met him kind of in a hangout, and we're all here from Southeast Tennessee. We're all in Hamilton County, Tennessee, right? Basically Chattanooga,
The greater metropolitan area, yeah.
greater metropolitan area. Area. Can I speak tonight? But I meant to ask Paul how much I can share about his background, but I'll let you do that.
At infinite amounts based on what we know about each other. I have zero issue with that.
Why don't you introduce yourself and so I don't say the wrong thing?
No, so my name is Paul Doe. Many of you will know me on the internet by the pseudonym Nighthawk Medic. And of course, I run the Nighthawk Medic Shoots production team. And my most identifying feature in the public and on the internet is advocacy for First and Second Amendment rights and moving obstacles out of the way for those things, as well as bringing new people into the fold of the Second Amendment community by encouraging accessible self-defense processes, as well as taking new people shooting.
I'm putting a comment on the YouTube side. Tell me if the audio is good, because the other thing I did once was have the desktop audio muted accidentally. So, Russell, you're familiar with all the technicalities that goes into something like this. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe why I wanted to do this. There's just a general feeling of what has been going on for me in the last almost 16 years on YouTube and in the gun community, and what has been going on, what hasn't been going on, and what might happen in the future related to the Second Amendment. And I just thought it was interesting that I knew both of you guys and that you're both really. I was telling Russell earlier that, when I was growing up, the guns were more like hammers or shovels. They were just tools. So I didn't really spend a lot of time getting into the nerdy side. I don't mean nerdy as a criticism. I mean it as a compliment. I didn't get into that side of guns as much as you two did. But I always thought it was a detriment, like that I didn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly to a degree.
But I was more into the philosophy than I was the actual mechanisms. So I don't know if that's a plus or minus.
Yeah. Well, I don't. When I look around the gun community, actually, when we talk about gun tubers and people that frequent the social media side of this, most gun tubers that I encounter on a daily basis are significantly younger in the gun and understanding of firearms and shooting firearms than I am. I am a baby in the YouTube and social media community, like T-minus 1.5 years. And so there is this strange dichotomy when it comes to gun tubers and the people that we encounter here as compared to people that we encounter in our real world. You know, I in a club with guys who've been shooting for 62 years. I shoot CMTP matches with people that have been shooting that particular rifle that they're holding in their hand for 50 plus years, you know?
Wow.
And I don't necessarily think that understanding firearms necessarily has the same weight in creating your skill level as an advocate, right? Um, my father believed that a man should have one firearm in his house that he knew it well, could take it apart, clean it, and in the middle of a pitch black night could pick it up and shoot straight with it. And he was one of the biggest firearms advocate I'd ever met in my life, but he only knew one gun. You know what I mean? So I don't think knowledge necessarily equates to talent in this particular avenue.
I think you're right. And I've heard the saying before, something along the lines of fear the man who only has one gun. I think that that's definitely true.
Yes.
Unless it's a BB gun. Yeah.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
Shot placement is everything.
Maybe
Of course.
Maybe we have to set up minimums for that philosophy. Maybe it has to be at least a Ruger 1022 or something. With a scope. I'm just kidding. I don't know. What's really funny is when I first got involved with YouTube in 2006, I was really excited. You know, I thought, well, isn't this awesome? This platform is awesome. You know, we get to get on YouTube and make videos, and we get to share our opinions, and we get to create a community. And after 10 years, I was just sort of blah, blah, blah about it. I don't know. I feel, first of all, anything I say tonight, I'm directing at myself too. Okay? I'm not being righteously indignant. I'm not saying that there are people who are at fault. I'm just saying what it feels like, what it seems like. I hate the word feelings too. I don't like the word feeling or feels or rights. I don't like either of those words. But it just seems like that we have allowed ourselves to become more about the mechanisms of these guns than about I don't know, about actually repealing gun laws. I don't know if you remember when I had the website repealgunlaws.com, Paul.
I do not.
I had this website. This was a long time. This was like 6 or 7. Seems like a longer than that. Years ago. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start a group of people and we're going to actually repeal gun laws. Well, we had a core group of people and we talked about it. We had hangouts. If you go look, we called it Monday Night Live, and we hung out. We hung out every week for almost a year. 52 meetings we had. At the end of that, we could not agree on one thing that we were going to try to accomplish after. And it was really one of those sobering awarenesses that the internet has has handicapped. It has emboldened some people, but it has handicapped other people into thinking that you can take simple actions with your keyboard and make some kind of difference. When really, I haven't seen that. And that's one of the points I wanted to bring up and see if it makes any sense to anybody or not.
No, I think you're right. I think the whole collectivism thing has sort of tricked people into thinking that they're taking some form of direct action when really all they're doing is clicking share. It doesn't really do anything practical. It's just sort of makes you feel good.
And thank you for saying share, because I think social media has done more harm to people on our side of the aisle than it has the other. It's kind of funny because we're all supposed to be rugged individuals, right? We're not supposed to be sheep that can be herded.
Mhm.
And the left they do it. When I say, and forgive me too, I'm an old timer. If I say left and right, it doesn't really mean. It's just a general term. It just means it's a placeholder for people not like me. Okay.
Sure.
So it doesn't mean anything really, not that much. It just means that the people who would love to see the Second Amendment go away, okay, those are the people I'm talking about.
Well, I think they've tapped into. I will often liken the BLM and Antifa protest groups to the protests that we saw in the 1960s and the 1970s, and people will get pretty angry at me when I say that to them, and then I start to point out the similarities. They have been tremendously effective in creating an environment where the large people are willing to join a cause, and only smaller numbers of that group are able to mobilize, but they're backed by that large number. And so we will refer to certain organizations as the 3% and things of that nature. And it refers back to a very simple concept in human psychology, which is that the average human being, out of 100 human beings, only about 3% of those people are willing to do something that will have their physical presence there and make an impact. And we've seen it repeated over and over again. It happened in Virginia. It's happened throughout the country. We know that this is a known equation on how the human psyche works. And the clickativism, as I heard it termed, is
Yes.
lowering that percentage even lower. And we know that physical presence is making an impact. Black Lives Matter and Antifa have successfully changed law in our nation, and in some cities have committed acts of violence and crime against federal institutions, and no one has gone to jail. So if we were to even gather half the numbers they garnered and to put the same pressure in local level organization anywhere in this country, we would begin to see impact. But as you're saying, Tony, we're reducing our effectiveness. We're reducing our power by not building up a heavy enough number that even 3% of our mass would be a significant impact.
I think it's easy to become disenfranchised. Not disenfranchised. What's the word? It's what would be the word for? It's easy to become not. What is the word I'm looking for?
Unmotivated?
Not motivated. Thank you. Yeah, it's easy to become. It's easy to be that person on the right. When I say the right again, it's not right or left. It's that placeholder. That complacent. Yeah, thank you, New York Outcast. I'm trying to keep up
There you
with the
go.
comments.
Somebody
again.
intelligent out there, finally.
I'm trying to keep up with the comments too. Thank you. But I actually, and this may be too long of a story, but when I first got involved with the gun community back, I think it was 2007 on YouTube, I had this idea. We'll take some pink crickets, we'll get them signed by big YouTubers, and we'll auction them off, and we'll do a fundraiser.
I remember that.
Well, I did that for a few years, and we raised money for Wounded Warriors Project and all these other different organizations. But I found. Do you remember who was the YouTuber that got? Oh, FPS Russia.
FPS Russia, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I was the first year. I was within a week of getting him to sign the pink. This was before all that trouble, right? This was before Keith Ratliff was killed. Okay. So I was through. You know who Iraq Vet 8888 is,
Of course.
right? Okay. So I'm trying to keep this story short, but it's going to be hard. Through Iraq 8888, had lined up to get him FPS Russia to sign the crickets. Okay. Well, Keith Ratliff got involved, and he said, "No, we want you to join our network, and if you do that, we'll have FPS Russia sign the crickets." Now, this story is going to make sense eventually. Okay. Well, I said, we were within a week of having them all signed. I had sent them all around the country. We were getting ready, and I just didn't feel like I could make a decision on joining that network, right? So I said, okay, no, no, thank you, whatever. That was the first taste that I got of the business side of the gun community. I didn't even know the business side of the gun community existed until that point. And I'm going to get to a point here soon, I promise. Okay. The reason I became a little disenfranchised was because I found that there's no true leadership. When I first joined YouTube, I thought it would be a great outlet to have big YouTubers like, Hickok, FPS Russia, Iraq Vet 8888, all those people I've met, right? I thought it would be a great outlet to have popular people become leaders in the 2A community. Well, guess what? It wasn't, because most of the people, and I hate to say this, were more interested in the business of their channels than the Second Amendment. Now, that's not a reach, okay? That's not nothing. It's true, okay? I'm just saying. So I was a bit disenfranchised with the gun community on YouTube, and which I thought was a huge disappointment for me. So now, I guess years later, I'm still looking for those people who, if there is a thing called taking advantage of social media to your advantage, it's almost like you can't count on the commercialized part of the gun community on social media to do it. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it does. And I can't really speak much to the GunTuber community because I'm not really a part of that. But I can speak to the, I don't know if alternative is the right word, but the communities I'm involved in regarding guns. They're far less interested in the legal aspect of it and more interested in the ungovernability aspect of it. Like, if you know me, I'm really big into 3D printing guns. And so the networks involved in that don't really have any moneyed interests because all of the files are available for free just by their nature. They're open source projects. So I think that opens up a much more interesting and encouraging avenue than necessarily the GunTuber aspect does. But that's just my opinion.
And I think we probably, it's a house divided against itself cannot stand. It's really difficult to make a stand when we're all over the place. And one of the things that I've found most appalling is we have members of our community who say, if we all join together and push in the same direction, then we're just as bad as Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, what? You're just as bad as the left if you join together in one voice and push towards a single goal. So I've told people this 100,000 times. The problem with conservatives is we're so dang conservative, and it's really super difficult to get people singing on the same sheet of music. I'm going to make a point here and then drop off and let other people talk for a minute. But in Rome and Italy, people in the entertainment industry were considered to be third-class citizens.
Yeah.
And there was a reason for that. And it's because those people are rarely the type of people that you actually want making life decisions for you. They're good at attracting attention to themselves, but they're very, very poor at making political decisions and things of that nature. So, Tony, I would wager that your frustration is rooted in the very thing and reason why other civilizations through history have regarded people like gun tubers and people of that nature to being secondary citizens.
Well, that's true, except that these people have millions of followers. I mean, look at the people that look at how many followers Hickok has and Eric has and other YouTubers, other than
So does PewDiePie.
right.
Now you're speaking my language.
But that's what we're talking about here, right? What at any given moment is enough to get a million people to follow you on YouTube? And it's not leadership. It's not a overwhelming desire to be an advocate. It's rather the ability to match something popular to what's popular at the moment. And some of that just has to do with how long you've been in the game. And we talked about this during the pistol brace thing, right? You couldn't get but a couple of the big channels to even say boo about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they were invested in themselves and not in the greater picture. So I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I don't think our way forward is through any social media pathway, but rather grassroots and starting in each of our own towns and building an advocacy group while making it as easy as possible for people to be an advocate, a part of that.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that open sourcing and decentralization is the way forward.
Well, I think you have a unique perspective, Russell, and that's why I asked you to come be a part of this discussion, because you have it's kind of cool. I remember the first time I heard you speak, I was like, oh, he's an anarchist. And then I thought, well, he's a cool anarchist. He's a cool anarchist.
I was going to say, you're not entirely wrong, but I kind of waffle.
No, I know, but I thought, well, that's kind of cool because, it's honesty. I can't stand people, and we talked about this the other night, I can't stand liars,
Mm-hmm.
They are the enemy, and I'm friends with a lot of liberals who are up front about their beliefs and who don't lie about it, right? The people that drive me nuts are the people who just outright lie about things, their stance, what they believe in, just to be manipulative. That's the true enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep your enemies close if they're lying to you about what they believe, or it doesn't do any good to keep your enemies close if they're lying to you. So I'm looking for the honest enemy,
Well, I hope you don't consider me an enemy, but no, I think
I consider you a friend. What I meant was that you have a different perspective than a lot of people that I have met online and in real life that I think is refreshing, and I wish more people could understand that. And I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the whole anarchism thing, when it comes to at least the Second Amendment, which I know anarchism and the Constitution, like, what are you talking about? I'm not really an anarchist. I just come across that way because I'm so extreme about not wanting the government to really have any involvement in my life whatsoever. But I do believe in the Constitution wholeheartedly, especially the First and Second Amendment.
No, and see, I mean to defend you, because an anarchist would want to tear down our Constitution, right, in the Second Amendment, and you don't want to do that.
No,
I mean anarchist in the fact that you don't respect establishments.
I respect some establishments, but I disrespect most of them.
It's a healthy disrespect, and I think it's a disrespect that all of us should have. We should get out of the fanboy mentality of anything, right?
Yeah, I would say especially political parties, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
I actually invited Nighthawk to come, but he's too mad. He's mad at me. But he said, I honestly don't believe Hickok would do anything to help the Second Amendment. Well, I've talked to Greg. I know him personally, Hickok, because he signed the crickets for 5 years. And he does care. He doesn't see himself, and this is the problem I found with all of them that have millions of subscribers. They don't see themselves as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's modesty, but the other part is trying to maintain commercial, viability, right? They feel like if they get too controversial that they won't be able to straddle that fence. That's part of there's a commercial viability that keeps you straddling the fence as far as political views and, well, any kind of view really, right?
Yeah. Well, that's precisely why I won't take on any sponsors, right? The money that I get for doing the gun stuff that I do is actually completely separate from my channel. I do advertising and things of that nature outside of the Nighthawk Medic Shoots group. And the reason for that is to keep the content pure, right? To keep it directed at getting advocacy out there and getting people moving the right direction. And like I said, I really, really, really super go back to the concept of how the Romans used to regard people like that. Their goals in life revolve entirely around keeping the thing going that they have going. Right? If you look, here recently we had this whole thing about Tom Cruise in Hollywood screaming his head off of the crew members because one of them walked within 3 feet of another one to look at a monitor while they're filming. And that entire tirade is just really a temper tantrum where Tom Cruise was afraid they were going to shut down filming and he was going to start losing money from his little pet project. So he didn't give a crap about their lives. He was just worried about the bank. Right.
Well, plus, as a Scientologist, he's a fascist, so you know.
Right. So, I mean, ultimately, what we're looking at is we keep putting our faith in people who intrinsically have very little interest out of something that is larger than themselves. And
yeah, I mean, I think something that speaks to that is the fact that most of us don't know the names of any prominent Second Amendment advocate lawyers.
I can tell you that I listened to an entire program where they were speaking.
Yeah.
And the people that we have going for us like to multi-bill us for the same lawsuit. When I showed my lawyer the video, he said, "You would fire me if I did what those people just did." And I said, "Yeah, you're exactly right. I would fire you." You know, going back and suing 3 different times for 3 different things attached to what should have been your original suit. It, to me, is stealing. That's stealing from the Second Amendment community. And here they were in this open debate, proudly announcing that they went back and sued the city 3 times to accomplish one thing, which is to open all the firing ranges in the city.
Jeez.
And I was like, why are we not mad?
Well, there are lawyers who are 2A advocates. Like, who's the guy from Florida, Kerry, and George? There are people in the gun community who are decent advocates, but they're just so freaking. They don't understand. They can't inspire people to do things. And that's the problem you run into with people like lawyers who know exactly what they're talking about, but couldn't inspire an ant to go pick up a piece of sugar.
I like that.
I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, they're just so damn boring. I'm sorry that you listen to them speak and they just don't inspire people to greatness.
Well, the founding fathers, we had lawyers, we had politicians, we had inspirational speakers, we had all sorts of different people put together to create that group, right? And I would tell people all the time that, who do you think the most important founding father was?
I'm biased towards Jefferson, so that's who I would say, but I get the feeling you're going to say John Adams.
Tony?
Benjamin Franklin? I don't know.
I'm going to say Adams. Why did you know I was going to say Adams?
Because he's a lawyer.
That's right. and Adams knew how to put all of the incredible ideas onto paper, right?
Yeah.
And so Benjamin Franklin, without Ben Franklin, we never would have gotten France in the war.
Yeah.
We never would have gotten half the financial stuff that we got, right? He was able to do that political side of the house. Jefferson was the same way, right? Hugely inspirational, but we had a good mix there, right, of men pushing in the same direction. And I think any change in the Second Amendment is going to require, or not Second Amendment, but change in the Second Amendment process and how we're fighting this battle is going to come with building a core like that, and that is pushing in the same direction. And what does it take to build a core like that? What did it take to build the original founding fathers? Because let's all be honest with ourselves for a minute. The original founding fathers were criminals under the law. And in addition to that, what they were effectively doing to begin with was not at all popular
No.
in any way, shape, or form. So
It's hard
what
for
was
people.
that?
It's hard for people to fathom that phrase under the law, because
That's right.
we live in such a different time where we all live under a decently just law. Now it's hard to fathom what it would have been like to live under an unjust law.
Well, give them 10 years; they'll learn something.
Well, we said that at 8 years, starting out with Obama, right? And it didn't.
Right. Well, I know we have, right?
Yeah.
I've watched freedoms disappear.
Yeah.
But ultimately, how do you reorganize that? Well, it comes from people being so disappointed in the way things are going that they decide to get together, right? It comes from men and women sitting down together and saying, I've had enough, and we have a plan. We have an idea. And so the entire list of these men are nothing but rebels, okay, under that law, under the law system that existed at the time, who saw a way forward. They were visionaries. What spawns them? Well, the only thing that spawns them is strife and conflict and disagreement. And we're starting to hit that point. Now, how do we usher in a founding father group? How do we usher in a group of people who are willing to combat at a larger scale? I don't know what that equation looks like.
I think, unfortunately, it's a good comparison to think about what happened in those days, because it's almost like it took a greater force than we could fathom to create the grassroots, the effort.
Well, and that's the thing that people like to ignore too, is that the founding fathers and the protest groups, so to call them, that sprung up from the early revolutionary days, they straight up broke the law.
Violated the crap out of it.
Yeah. And people now who talk about the patriot movement and everything, they're like, yeah, I'm all about the founding fathers, but you gotta cross your T's and dot your I's though. And I'm like, you're missing the whole point, man.
Yeah. Well, so the question is, are you voting for illegal acts? Well, so somebody said to me one time, at what point do you take up your rifle and go start shooting bad guys? I said, well, I've yet to identify bad guys.
Yeah.
Because I would have already been shooting them if there were bad guys out there, right? What I do have is people who do not agree with the base foundation of the Constitution. So how do we fight that? Well, we've got 3 boxes, right? The ballot box, the cartridge box, and most importantly, the soapbox. And so for now, I'm fighting soapbox and ballot box. Right? Every part of my advocacy is directed at those 2 things. How do we avoid getting to cartridge box? That's by intensifying the efforts in those other 2 boxes.
I think we have to stop thinking of, I don't know, this is where I get myself into trouble all the time.
We're treading dangerous territory.
They call me FUD and all this kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think if I would never, I think we'll be successful when we get out of the pick up our guns and go shoot people mentality.
Well, and that's why I say let's fight in the box that's here now and the one that should count, right?
I mean, hammers kill more people than guns do. So, but the problem is, since we think that guns, if we could just somehow separate guns from the philosophy of the Second Amendment. And I know that's hard to do, and it's a radical thought, but I think we almost have to. We almost have to look at the Second Amendment as just pure philosophy and not a tool for. What am I trying to say? It's very. I'm not a wordsmith. Help me out here, Russell. Because of course you don't agree with me, so it's kind of hard to get you to paraphrase me. But
I feel like you're trying to say rebellious intent.
What's that? Rebellion would be, for me, developing some candidates that we could get elected, and take, that's what the left has done, right?
Yeah.
The left figured it out 50 years ago, and they just went to work. You know?
Eh,
I think the part of the issue there, though, is that politics generally favor liberalism or leftism anyway, because it tends to fit their mold better. People like me, and I'm only speaking for myself, people like me tend to see politics as more a hindrance to actually getting things done. You know, changing the law is, to me personally, sort of out of reach at this point. It's sort of beyond hope. So,
But that's sad. You sadden me when you say that.
I personally, I think it's true. I think that, I mean, it seems impossible to go back to pre 1934 before the NFA. I just don't see that happening in the near future.
I don't think we can fight from 10 years. I would agree with you from the standpoint of I don't think that's a good place to fight from. I think grassroots has to be the way forward. I think it's a 10 to 15 year battle stateside, right? I think it's how much are you doing to turn your state into an actual full Second Amendment sanctuary, because that's the new trend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that people understand and can kind of sink their teeth into. We've got to give people bite-sized nuggets. The only way to draw them away from advocacy is to click a mouse button and put a like. To advocacy is to send a email that has an impact on a political candidate, because, by the way, they just got 6,000 emails that said, I'm not going to vote for you unless you vote for this.
The problem we're dealing with is that it's like wanting to be a chess master without playing chess. Okay?
Yeah.
You gotta get involved with the politics, and you gotta play the politics to get what you want, and to a certain degree, without anarchy, without burning down buildings and shooting people. You have to get involved with the politics of it. That's the sad part.
I'm not advocating for that at all. I do think, though, that just my opinion, that the political aspect of it comes after the action aspect of it. I'll give you an example. Let's say, use something unpopular among your viewership, I'm sure, marijuana legalization, right? Where people just ignore the law. You know, marijuana is technically speaking illegal, but no one cares. So I think if you get to the point where people say, oh, suppressors are illegal, but they're so easy to make, I don't care, I'm going to start making them. You know, the whole become ungovernable thing, I think that has a much bigger impact than sending emails to politicians.
Okay, so I have to ask you, what does that mean? People in my my audience, what do you mean? You think, what did you say?
No,
I
said
take issue with something. You're like, well, as if people who watch my channel are
resistance,
are nuns, and or something. What?
Well, I mean, we're talking about conservatism.
I know, but I'm not necessarily a conservative per se.
I know.
I'm not a far right winger like most people think I am.
I wouldn't be here if I knew you were.
Yeah. So I'm speaking to those people who probably think, on YouTube, who think I am. Just because I've tried to fit into that crowd a bit to try to influence it, but I've failed. So that's my disenfranchisement, and I'm admitting to that. So, but I honestly, I give you two a compliment by refreshing having more of a refreshed outlook on life, because I realize there are people in all walks of life who do believe in the Second Amendment, whether not related necessarily to a political party or a stance or a philosophy, but it's just the pure thought of freedom is what we're talking about, not necessarily any sort of laid out philosophy, political philosophy. You can just be a person who likes freedom, and you don't have to subscribe to any other thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul's like, no, wait a minute.
No, I was sitting there mulling over the concepts, right? Because think before you respond occasionally, right, in your life. At least take a second.
Well, you're doing better than me.
Time's up.
Don't downshift right into stupid when you open your mouth. And I think this is where somebody said to me the other day, "You're a born leader." Yeah, but sometimes you just got to follow. And so wherever we can get traction at any level is, that's critical for us right now. So wherever we can find traction and get a hold somewhere, I think that's where we get as many people as we can following at that point, right? And then you kind of evolve your leadership team from there. It's kind of ready, go, set, but if we don't find somewhere we're getting traction and then move forward with it, we're never going to progress. Somebody said to me the other day, Antifa and BLM came out of nowhere. I said, no, they came out of 8 years ago. 2 years ago, they started
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 2 years ago, they started threatening major corporations and made it so that you pay their bills. All these companies throughout the United States that have donated the $482 million into that nonprofit so far, they're getting their money from us.
Hey, Russell, do you remember when Occupy Chattanooga was a thing and they set up tents at the courthouse?
Oh yeah, the hippies. Yeah, I remember that.
I went down. Hippies. That's funny. I went. They would think they would be mad at you for calling them hippies.
Yes, they'd totally be mad at you.
Yeah, well, I have a gun.
But I went down and interviewed them.
I win.
And it was almost like as if they were truly hypnotized. I mean, it was really freaky. I felt like I was speaking to Scientologists or something.
Well, it was exciting. The whole Occupy thing was exciting. I was really shocked for them. I mean, I was really shocked at how a lot of people had not heard about Antifa before, like this year. Because, I remember when they were doing their stuff with the Black Bloc guys in Toronto with the G7 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, this is nothing new. They've been in Germany since the 1930s, for heaven's sake. 20s, actually, during the German Civil War. I mean, it's nothing new at all.
Well, Antifa latching onto BLM was new, right?
And they were kind of unwanted too.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give some perspective on that, I was in Chattanooga covering the protests as a journalist, and a lot of the response to I'll just be politically incorrect for a moment, the pasty white kids who are on college break was not exactly friendly. It's like, why are you here? This is our thing.
Yep.
And I think they just don't sort of get that people don't really like them.
They don't care.
You can say pasty white kids. You just can't say the N word. Okay?
No, I wouldn't. And I am a pasty white kid. So.
Plus, they come with money. So I have organized resistance to the last 5 events that they've had in the eastern part of Tennessee. And in all but one of the instances, probably close to 90% of the people there were paid actors. They were paid performers. They literally went to a website, looked on the website, and hired people to come perform. It was a bunch of little college kids scared to death because 64 patriots showed up with the entire police force and surrounded them and sat there and let them get into a screaming match, But we're again going back to the concept of the 3% organization. We're not fighting millions of people, right? We're fighting 3% of a large organization being paid by us. And so conceptually creating that very concept. So let's argue 5 million firearms owners in the United States. If you that do any type of advocacy, if you can start working on grassroots in any of those areas where those people are concentrated to any level, then we have the potential to start to have that same kind of impact. And I would wager we're miles ahead of those people, right? How many decades have people been using guns in the United States and are paying into organizations like the NRA? To say to a local NRA representative, we want to be more active, that might be a beneficial conversation. You know what I mean? We want to see more impact, and we want to see something outside of what has been going on so far. Having a conversation is just the first step, and encouraging more activity will inherently go forward. Does that take a great leader? No, you don't need George Patton. You don't need Eisenhower to accomplish that. You just need a spark.
And it's funny you mentioned Patton, because one of the things I was trying to make some show notes here, and I was I was like, who are that was my number 2 question. Who are the leaders? Are there any? Is the internet, in the internet YouTube gun culture, and but you can't. It's like Patton was, obviously a general that was. So the people who, okay, so what am I trying to say here? The people who joined to fight, who volunteered to fight in World War II were there obviously as volunteers, right? Other people were drafted, right? Well, this fight is relying solely on volunteers or some sort of way to, right? After those people were all gathered, like mandatorily.
Welcome to the Army.
Then he inspired them, right? How do you do that now when a grassroots movement would be 100% voluntary, and then you would have to have that leader to inspire people to. I mean, even though it does take a grassroots movement, there still has to be some structure that comes out of that. If effective.
I never served in a drafted army. I served in the volunteer army, right? And we were there with passion. And there have been lots and lots of arguments through history that volunteer armies are always better than conscripts.
No, they are. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there was a purpose that you all came together first.
That's right.
And then you were led by an organizational method, that hopefully
incompetent people who couldn't graduate college without the help of the army. Yeah. I remember distinctly.
In any event,
Thank you, Lieutenant Shortbus.
He had that pearl-handled revolver, and that's all that mattered, right? So
yeah, right. That's exactly it.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that it's different in a way, right? How Patton led his troops is different than what we need now.
Patton was a war general, and so there are men and women out there who are only leaders when the whole thing starts to come apart, right? And we refer to them as heroes and sing songs about them, and they get Twisted Tea commercials and everything else. But the truth of the matter is those people are there for when everything comes loose. Everything that happens before General's March or Patton's March is bullets, beans, and boots, right? And that's the logistic general, and that's all those people behind who do the planning and create everything that is required for that glorious march across the world. That is never about one person, right? It's about putting together the team and ensuring that you have the right people in the right role. As a combat medic, I never was issuing, edicts on movement and things of that nature. I wasn't out there giving orders to masses of troops. I had a very specific role, and a great leader is not characterized by being the smartest or the most talented, but rather the one that makes the best use of their resources. Patton was actually very famous for saying that a general must be able to intake all of the information. He would say, beware the specialist. The specialist, the bomber pilot, the artilleryman, the sailor, all believe that they have the right tool to win the war with. It is up to you to decide how to properly deploy them as a part of your greater vision of the battlefield. And so that has to kind of be how we view this process. So we have Tonys, the other Tony, the second is for everybody out there that are great, tremendous recruiters, right? Uh, to leverage that talent and to bring Tony into a bigger type environment. The Second Amendment Foundation, here's a financially well organized legal organization, or the Gun Owners of America, or whoever yours is, right? How could they be paired with another group like that? How could they be? And so instead of having hundreds of little groups, we begin to look at how we put the legal organization and the recruiter organization all together for at least periodic activities to encourage more unified pushes in a single direction.
Yeah, and it occurred to me as I was talking about Patton that the groups like Antifa and BLM are the organized armies of that side of the battle of the war. But we don't really have that. We don't really have that structure in place.
Yeah, that's something I was actually going to point out, is that when we talk about Antifa and when you talk about BLM and you talk about grassroots movements, that's what they are. The thing that a lot of Second Amendment advocates are seeking to be is what they already are structurally. And I think that fear of emulating that structure is what's led to a lot of the downfall of the Second Amendment movement, because they're like, well, we can't do that because that's too much like them. But they're winning right now, so yeah.
And my favorite thing is when people tell me that I'm not a patriot because I say that the enemy is winning. Boy, you ought to be scared shitless that they're winning. You know what I mean?
How can you not see that they're winning?
Right. And we tend to nitpick terminology. And Kingpin, I respect what you're saying. Okay. But let's focus in on what we're really talking about here is whether they are grassroots or not. The reality of it is they're effective. And so what you don't have to telegraph an effective play in order for it to be, or excuse me, you don't have to not use an effective play to avoid it being defeated, right? And so I tell people, everybody in the world knows how to use a flanking maneuver in the military. Everybody in the world knows how to assault a fortified position, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all known tactics. It doesn't make them less effective on the battlefield just because the other army knows that tactic exists.
Well, I was going to agree with Kingpin in the fact that they were created in a lab, but then I disagree that he said they are cannon fodder.
Well, he's not wrong.
You're only cannon fodder if you're ineffective.
So what happened to the brown shirts after Hitler was done with them?
Yeah, the Night of Long Knives.
That's correct. And people forget that. The reality of it is Antifa and BLM are just tools right now.
No, and that's what happens in almost every leftist uprising that you see, is as soon as power is consolidated, any disparate voice gets silenced. I mean, look what they did to Trotsky.
Exactly right.
The German army didn't they just become like the German police for a while, and then they eventually worked their way back into the German military? Right.
No, they killed a bunch of them.
You're talking about Nazis. I'm talking about the German military, the original.
Well, no, but from the perspective of, so the brown shirts were basically the Nazi parties shout down the enemy, what Antifa is doing right now for the left, right? And the reality of it is, it just as was pointed out here, they eliminate every single party in history that has used a group like this has ended up cleaning them out because they're a pain in your ass too, right?
Right.
BLM and Antifa have already called on the Biden campaign. They've already talked crap on the Biden campaign. I would bet if they start pulling stuff again, we'll see the Biden campaign, if they're in charge come January, crush them militarily or through local law enforcement. I bet we see them
everything needs to go back to being cool. Everything needs to go back to being copacetic.
Yep.
We won't be able to tolerate buildings being burned and the unrest, civil unrest. Everything needs to go. COVID needs to go out of the news cycle. It's just that sort of thing.
Yep.
But the I've been thinking about something that you said ever since. What was it? 5 minutes ago, you said that our side cannot become organized because we're afraid of appearing to be like them. Is that what you said?
Me, yes.
Which is interesting because how do you fight an enemy that's organized if you don't become organized?
Yeah, and that's sort of exactly what I've been saying for forever. That sort of falls on deaf ears because you keep looking at. I think Second Amendment people are looking in all the wrong places. I think that they're looking for effective change, and that's not to say I'm not one. I think that they're looking for effective change through a person who will rise up and do great things. I don't think it's going to work that way. I think you need people, the collective, and I'm not a collectivist, but the collective to say, hey, we're done with it. We're not going to follow your rules anymore because screw it.
Well, so if the process forward, I mean, we've seen in the United States significant, very highly significant resistance to laws, right? We've seen pistol braces not turned in, pump stocks not turned in. Oh God, not foreshadowing.
Please no.
The Kingpin, I am Nighthawk. Haha. The magazine bans and things of that nature, they're not getting any output out of it. But here's the thing. It doesn't change anything, right? To just be resistant. I love resistance. I think passive resistance is step one, right? When they make an illegal law, you don't obey that law. Step two from passive resistance is to then move forward to fight in their own territory, right? We spend more time on our heels than anything else, taking and dodging that next hit, right?
Right.
And that's really where our pain comes from. That's why I'd love to see more directed recruitment, right? More directed organization with groups like the Second Amendment Foundation and GOA and things of that nature. More targeted processes around that. If we can get the other organization to spend all their time trying to defend against our attacks, that begins to shift how much energy they can focus on attacking us. Enemies that have time to plan and room to navigate will invariably do more damage to you than you do to them.
I was just going to take a second. There's several questions out in the chat asking about Russell. Russel Stroud is the news director at 92.7. He's an awesome guy. I started listening to your radio station about a year ago. Very impressed. I told him he needed to take over the morning show.
No, not nearly talented enough for that.
Would not listen to me. I've had many conversations with his boss trying to get him to do that, and he is convinced that he is better off with a liberal creating controversy on the radio show than. And I get it. I get the whole controversy makes entertainment, but it's annoying, to be honest with you, after a while, and. Anyway, that's what Russell is, unless you have anything to add. He's also a consummate gun guy,
I wouldn't say quite consummate, but I do a lot of other projects outside of my regular work. I've done quite a bit of audio editing for Popular Front, which is a podcast and documentary producer. Recently, actually, this plays into this. Recently, Jake over at Popular Front did a documentary on 3D printed guns in Europe. Some of you have probably seen it. I did the voice transformation on that to mask the dude's voice.
Nice.
And he 3D printed, I don't know if you guys have seen the FGC-9, he 3D printed a entirely gun part free firearm in an undisclosed country in Europe. So that's the kind of cutting edge that I'm talking about when I'm saying saying screw it, we're ignoring all your rules, because that's the kind of thing that's happening in Europe. Imagine what we could do here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, like I said, I think that's step one, right? Step one is saying no, right? I'm not going to be compliant to what you're saying. And step two is to say, and now that you've pissed me off, I'm going to stick it in your ear, right?
Yeah.
I'm about to sick large scale lawsuits all over you. And by the way, because you have just violated the Constitution of the United States, I'm going to personally make your life hell. I'm going to start suing you personally because you went out and attacked my constitutional rights. If it is so awful to be a politician who fights against the Second Amendment that you want to stop doing it, that's when we'll win. When people say no and then attack. That's it.
And that's the tactic that you see happening in media right now, where it's so unpopular to be anything but conformed.
There you go.
We need a 2A Gandhi.
Well, you know, it
Russell,
wouldn't be bad. Gandhi wasn't anti-gun, though. That's the thing.
No, Gandhi was not anti-gun at all.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It just occurred to me. We need a 2A Gandhi, and Russell, you're our new 2A Gandhi.
I'm not quite as chill as Gandhi, but
you have to start going half naked and shave your head.
Well, actually, the CDC has banned me from taking my shirt off, unfortunately.
The CDC. I thought you were going to say the FTC.
No, them too.
Those people.
It is funny,
One of them
though,
three-letter
the
organizations.
conversations I have with your boss through email are hilarious because I'm like, you gotta let Russell take over. You gotta let and he's. It's kind of funny though. I don't know what the
The FDA.
huh? Oh yeah, the FDA. I don't know what I don't understand the mentality of creating controversy just for controversy's sake. I listen, and this goes to all people. If that's what am I trying to say? If that's all you want to do is create controversy without any kind of end result, then I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in an end result. If you want to create controversy, fine, but it has to end with you have to have there has to be a good ending to it,
Yeah, I'm perfectly content to do exactly what I do right now. I don't really want to expand beyond that. It's just I like what I do, and I don't want to enlarge my role any further than I have to.
I wish you all would listen to. Can't they go on Facebook though and listen? Wouldn't anybody in the country be able to go on to Nooga Radio, Chattanooga, on Facebook and listen?
Yeah, I wasn't going to self promote, but yeah, you can go on. You can go on Nooga Radio 92.7 on Facebook, and you can listen there if you want to. We're live anytime we're live in the studio. We're live on Facebook as well. If you want to hear me for whatever reason, I'm on from 7 to 9 every weekday.
What?
Except tomorrow.
What are you talking about? Why haven't you told me this before? 7
What?
to 9. What do you do? What do you talk about?
7 a.m. to 9 a.m. That's when I'm on the morning show.
Oh, I thought you were talking about 7 to 9 p.m. And
Oh, heavens no. That's way too long a shift.
What in the world? Yeah. No, every now and then, Russell will give me a glimmer of hope because he'll pop in and sort of be the anti-Jeff, the anti-hero. Not the villain, just the anti-hero. And I get hope because, what really inspires, what's really encouraging to me, and honestly, the young people today kind of depress me a little bit, but you have raised my hope in the future.
You're talking to the wrong ones, I think.
No, I see a lot of young people. I see a lot of millennials and Generation Xers on. Trust me, I've got 50,000 comments on my videos over 16 years, and I see them commenting, and I go look at their channels, and I see the content they're producing, and it's a little depressing, to be honest with you. The new generations coming up are not as excited about what freedom lovers are excited about. So I don't know. I just don't see it. If somebody can, but you see, the reason I was really excited about you was because of that. If someone else will direct me to other young people who have the same mindset, I would love to see them. But
we'd like to keep our heads down.
Yeah, I think to your point, social standards being what they are, it's difficult not to kind of keep your head down a little bit, and problematic for people that do. And we've got to turn that around too. That's not a joke. When it is scarier to to say something about injustice than it is to respond to it. That speaks to the health of your nation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's social media has both helped and hurt that, I think, because I'm connected with a lot of people and I've done professional work with a lot of people who are nowhere near me geographically. So social media has really helped in that aspect, but it's sort of a squeakiest wheel type thing too.
Yeah.
Well, I've been able to use social media to expand sort of a professional aspect of my life, but when I try to use it for 2A discussions or anything like that, it becomes really difficult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's the population. It's like my theory about gun owners. On the internet, like it seems like on YouTube specifically, it seems to me that 60% of the gun owners are more liberal than they are conservative. Based on my own personal experience. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think we let's be real for a minute. It's not just conservatives running out and pro-gun people running out buying guns right now.
Yeah.
I got in line to buy ammunition today, and the lady standing in line behind me was wearing a Hillary Clinton shirt. I mean, she asked me a gun question, and I was like, "Yes, your 9mm shoots 22. I
guess what I'm saying is, your general perception is that you could, if you had a community, and I keep using YouTube because that's where I am. Mm-hmm. If you have a community there, and there's 10,000 of us on YouTube, you would think when you first get involved that the majority of them are like-minded, But I found out, especially in leading up to the 2016 election, there were many gun lovers who were Trump haters, And I get it, okay? I got it. You don't have to explain it. But I was just surprised by the vitriol, I can almost understand that, well, we just don't, I don't really necessarily agree. It wasn't like that. There was no mature discussion. It was pure hate. It was
Right.
never Trumpers to the nth degree.
I mean, me, I'm not a big Trump guy either, but like I get it.
You're objective though, okay? Again, That's why I like you, Russell. You're objective. You're an objective thinker, and anybody who can look at both sides of any issue, I think, are mature thinkers, and that's what it's going to take. But a lot of these people are they're just this or that, and that's it. There was no reasoning. And what I heard was, Trump's gonna, destroy the Second Amendment. He's gonna give in to the, creating, you know what I mean? It was the whole gambit of bad guy.
Yeah, but you hear that every election.
Well, I made a comment the other day that got me a little bit of hate on Facebook, but also a lot of laughs from people. I said, every so often the tree of liberty must be fertilized from the bull crap from the election year. And let's be honest for a minute. Trump did not do everything he said he would, but nobody was surprised by that. But he did a lot of really great things. I voted Republicans out of office after the Bushes tried to kill everybody I knew. And so the reality of it is and to be honest with you, Clinton wasn't a bad president. So from the standpoint of is one party or one man, I think we're approaching a period of time where it may be we cannot vote for the Democrats anymore. You know what I mean? I think we're approaching a period in our history where the difference between the two political parties may be such a wide gap that it's not something that can ever be traversed. But I don't know that we're there yet, right? I talk to Democrats in my world periodically who still are fairly conservative in Tennessee. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, especially in Georgia. A lot of the Democrats that are in the House and in the Senate are really Democrats in name only.
Yeah. So I don't know that we go out and label one group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, when I'm looking at any person, I try to, you try to go beyond the immediate personality. Like I wasn't a big fan of Trump's, his out front, you're fired, whatever the show was, that person, that persona that he put out there, right? But you know what I knew, because I'm a capitalist, I knew that he would inspire people to invest in business, in the economy, and that when you have, and this is another thing a lot of people miss, is that if your economy is strong, your country is strong. You can't have freedom without a strong economy. You just can't. Some people just hate the idea that capitalism is really the foundation of a true society.
Well, I think it's symbiotic. I think freedom builds a strong economy.
I'm
Right.
a believer in the Tytler cycle.
But you have to believe in both, though. You can't just be one of those people that says, "Oh well, if I just believe in one side, the other side will come." You have to, and that is at its basic level. That's what I saw in 2015 with the hate for Trump. They hated his personality. They couldn't get past his personality, and they still can't. Those are the never Trumpers. They can't get past the personality to just look at the philosophy of freedom and capitalism and how they're intermingled and how they work together.
Well, in I don't think I've ever. Does anybody know of a capitalist economic system that has ever existed outside of a free model of government? Aside from the China Hong Kong example, which is not really how that worked.
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody says anytime
Well,
I
I
say
mean,
that.
the Chinese are capitalists out of a motivation to become dominant, dominate the world. So,
Yep.
sure, they're going to use capitalism to get what they want. They're also going to steal intellectual property and everything else that you're not supposed to do when you're an honest capitalist. But which I understand is not the majority of capitalists. But anyway, that's another discussion. The point I guess I'm trying to make now is that even if you had that thing that created a grassroots movement, it's almost like it's almost like you need somebody like the antimatter of George Soros, to fund and organize, you know what I mean, the resistance. And that kind of goes against what I think you two believe. Which is healthy.
I mean,
I like it. I love these kind of debates and discussions where people can talk and not get mad and call each other, get personal. This is the kind of discussion that has to happen before any positive, things can happen. I think.
I mean, to the billionaire point, I think that billionaires require government structure as it exists now to be billionaires in the first place. So I don't think you're going to see any billionaires out there who are advocating for a true free market at all, ever.
No, and I mean, somebody said to me the other day, I don't think that this political party that the Democratic Party is really pushing for socialism, because why would the people who've taken advantage of the capitalist society be supporting them? And I said, I didn't think you understand how being a multi-billionaire works.
Yeah.
And we sat down and discussed it.
This is the misconception of capitalists are not. That you see, this is the propaganda that works on your minds. You think that capitalists are socialists because they take advantage of government. They're not. That doesn't mean just because a businessman takes advantage of tax breaks or loopholes or whatever, that doesn't mean he's a socialist.
No. Hang on. I'm not talking about tax breaks or understanding how big government works. We're talking about pushing for bigger government because you can push your business heavier with those advantages.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't look if you were saying that this president is intrinsically good, and he's going to make the government smaller. Okay. And so I'm going to vote for him because he's a good president and will be good for my people. Then you're boosting the behavior of a good man. If you vote for a politician and support his belief system because it's going to make the government bigger and make you more money, then you're directly supporting whatever direction that political system is pushing. And right now, the big government party is pushing socialism. So I'm not saying that they're in always socialists.
No,
I'm saying they're
they're
pushing
trying to.
socialism
You see,
now.
this is again. You're pushing the propaganda. Capitalists believe in a bigger pie. They don't believe in socialism. Okay,
Well, free market capitalists.
Free market capitalists, yes.
See,
Capitalism is not defined as free market always.
You're right. That's the distinction to be made.
Okay.
We want, if the government grows, then so be it. As long as you still have standards, as long as the pie is growing bigger for everyone. You see. And that we're not. There's a difference between socialism from the top down and capitalism from the bottom up. You see, true capitalists believe that everyone has the same opportunity, and you do. In our free society, you have the same. Look at me. I was born in a poor family. I had nothing. I worked all my life. I have a little something now, and I'm happy. Okay, there was no government that kept me down. There's, under true socialism, the things that I did that improved my life would not have been possible. So you see, you keep trying to mix the effects of socialism. You keep trying to claim that, and this is where I will argue about this. It's that, again, socialism from the top down is different from capitalism from the bottom up. That's all there is to it.
Well, and I think those are two very general terms. When you're talking about laissez-faire style capitalism, free market capitalism. That's what created the man you are today, effectively. Social capitalism, or the Nordic model, Rhine capitalism, those styles of capitalism are what a lot of these businesses are pushing for right now, which is where the government controls the market for them. And because that coordinated market economy exists, they just have to be there as the price controls go in place, and it ensures that they become 20, 30, 40 years down the line, 2 or 3 generations, they become plutocrats.
But this is part of the myth, I think, that people allow themselves to fall into. Okay? Because the people still, nothing is keeping the people from controlling the government. Okay?
I agree.
It's the fault of the people if they allow capitalism to control government. It's the fault of the people. It's not the fault of business. Okay?
I agree fully.
And it's a bit of a cop-out to say, well, we're you know what I mean? It's from my standpoint, who I'm true. You're right, laissez-faire, whatever. There's always this underlying thing that capitalism is a menace, and that's not healthy in our society.
That's not at all what I'm saying, brother. What I'm saying is, you're talking. So this started with you saying we need to get an anti-George Soros, right?
Well, it's a bit of piece of humor, but
right.
Yeah.
But we do. The reality of it is, it would be great to have that type of human being in our mix, right? So here we have pro 2A groups. What if they were getting pushed millions of dollars by an organization, right? So the reality of it is. So when we're talking about why there are not a bunch of CEOs like that, it's because these men are not stupid. They see the direction of travel politically for our nation, and they figured out how they're going to participate in that. And when we're talking, so if our economy was purely laissez-faire capitalism, if it truly existed under that concept, those people would not be pushing for men like Joe Biden or big government organizations. There would be no need for them to do that. But as the government begins to take over more and more sectors of the private economy. And if you don't believe me that's coming, I understand. But what I believe is coming, as this small business closes down, these larger businesses are beginning to suckle at the teat of government money more and more. And that's where we're seeing them pushing towards social capitalism, which is a stepping stone for Ryan capitalism.
My job as a capitalist is to create a bigger pie. It is the job of the citizen to elect people who make sure that it's done in a fair manner and an equitable manner.
But they've not done that for the last several hundred years now.
So whose fault is that? Is it?
No, it's
the guy who's playing Call of Duty every other hour. That's we've entered the Call of Duty era. Barrett and I were talking about this the other day. And I said, I just out of the blue said, we've been in the Call of Duty era for too long. We need to exit it. And he was like, "What are you talking about, dude?" Like, there's a thought there somewhere, but it's just so what happens is the capitalist becomes the enemy and not the true, and the looking in the mirror goes away, and all can be blamed on capitalism. You see, it becomes the propaganda machine works, and that itself allows true socialism to creep in. That's what happens.
I think the poor education is at fault for a lot of that too, because people conflate what Paul was just talking about, social capitalism, with free market capitalism, and think that they're the same thing.
Two different things, yeah.
Completely different, yeah.
Very two different things. And social capitalism is the stepping stone to socialism.
Absolutely.
Once businesses start buying into...
What happened?
We know what's happened every time the government has attempted to regulate the economic situation in any area of the world. And whatever you want to label.
No, YouTube's coming after us.
And the whole system collapses on top of itself.
We're getting interruptions now.
It's George Soros.
It's the YouTube machines that they found us.
We called them out. That's why
we're in the Matrix, and they found us hiding in our little corner.
We called out their method of gaining more power.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I still say that I still think that your idea or your what am I trying to say? Your accusation that socialism is the fault of capitalism or some.
No. That's and I'm doing a poor job of making my point, Tony. And I apologize.
You're not. It's just that YouTube keeps cutting out on me, I guess, and I'm missing some.
I'm not. I do not believe that capitalism is a pathway to socialism.
No.
What I'm saying is that the term capitalism is a very generic term. Okay, and so we tend to put socialism and capitalism into very large generic conversations and assume that the situation that exists in any given point in time is the totalitarian of that just term. Right,
but you see what happens though is people they start to generalize. There are hundreds of thousands of businesses out there that operate under an honest system every day.
Absolutely,
and more. The small businesses of this country are the heart of it. And
that's why they're trying to kill them.
And none of them.
That's the problem, right?
And none of them are operating under this idea that we're going to affect government in a way just to allow us to only exist in our own little world.
Well,
none of the small businesses are. That's why they're killing them left, right, and sideways.
Right. The big corporatism is using government as a means of killing competition, which is the small business.
which is social capitalism. That's the definition of that process. But what they do not have the foresight to see, or maybe they do see, they just don't think it'll happen before they make so much money that they can pack up and go somewhere else with all that money.
Yeah, they're in
is
Monaco already.
Right, they're already in Monaco. Is that process by which government destroys small business and then does a wealth transfer to that larger organization eventually ends in the government taking over your company and trying to keep it running.
As a business owner of 40 years now, I can say that it has always been up to me. I have always been responsible for running my business and how and operate and the decisions that are made. There's never been any outside influence. It's all, I have to take the blame or credit for everything, and I think that that's pretty much the way it is. And when you go into the larger corporations, you can say that the boards of those corporations are the same, are kind of the same entity that I am, right? I think that when you speak of socialism, it's a crutch, a bit of a crutch to start talking about. It's almost like it's almost like it's a morsel that is thrown to people so it's a sideshow. You know, when really we should be talking about what is at the root of all this, and that is the fact that people don't develop good candidates and get them elected.
Well, that's fair.
You know?
I mean,
That is fair.
Yeah, if we start at, instead of going 20,000 feet, right? If we start at grassroots, so let's go again. Whose job is it to develop a good candidate? And you've already said that, right? It's our job to go out there and develop quality candidates.
It's hard work.
It is. Patriotism, and I've said this lots of times, patriotism is a nonstop 24-hour-a-day job. You are constantly responsible for watching for problems in your government that will trigger a situation where you become less free. It is exhausting. And every time we've lost some level of freedom, it's because we've stopped being vigilant. And I'm not going to point the finger at anybody but myself, right? I was not an advocate for the Second Amendment until 3 years ago, but I took advantage of it, right? And my wake-up call was, people not understanding and seeing people not understand when things were going on, right? I watched a political party get on TV and talk about disarming us every time something bad happened with a gun. Every single time. And I said, oh, crap, that's a problem, right? So I, from the perspective of a common idiot such as myself, we have a developing issue that could potentially terminate in socialism. But let's go with the face problem, which is good politicians are not being developed. So how do you develop a good politician? That comes with grassroots advocacy groups. When politicians see people in numbers that will potentially vote for a process that they could get behind and support, they tend to speak positively towards that process and vote towards that process. Let's be honest with ourselves for a minute. The only thing a politician wants is to be reelected.
Right.
That's it. And we don't take advantage of that enough. And going back to the beginning of this conversation, Antifa and BLM understand that. And in cities where the majority of people are pushing towards their belief system, those politicians are changing criminal law and ignoring criminality to ensure their reelection.
Yeah, and I think that I agree, and I think that the cycle of complacency certainly hasn't helped either, because I think now where we are now in almost 2021 in a couple hours now, people are complacent because they've been complacent for so long that it seems like complacency is the only way at this point, because what can I do at this point?
Well, and I mean, it comes down to, so the hardest thing in the world to do is to get a 2-ton ball rolling, right?
Right.
And so you throw yourself up against it and struggle against it and struggle against it and struggle against it. And 90% of the people in the world walk away frustrated. So I didn't come to YouTube to show off the gun that I bought this week, right? I came to YouTube to show off the gun that I bought this week, tell you whether or not it works great, and then steal 5 seconds of your time where I encourage you to vote and to protect your First and Second Amendment rights, right? Um, and the only part of that video that I really give a crap about is that part, right? And the fact that as my viewership grows, more people are exposed to that.
I don't want you to get me wrong. I'm not against.
No.
I'm not. I love. I love all the content that we all put out. I just feel like it's sometimes we lose. We kind of get lost in it.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of time and to build it and to create it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's my hobby put in a public format is what I tell people.
Right.
So,
but we can't. But I think what we do is we all, if you take all the YouTubers and you ask them this question, do you think your gun content helps the Second Amendment? They would probably 90% of them would say it probably does. That they think it does. But it doesn't. It does and it doesn't. Because making gun videos isn't a substitution for 2A advocacy.
Yeah, I can buy the perspective on that. I think the thing I do that probably does the most 2A advocacy is to drag people shooting every weekend, right?
If you don't, if people aren't encouraged to vote and be, and make a change as far as that goes, then it's really a distraction, to be honest with you.
No, I think the outreach aspect is totally important, and I think that this is sort of the cycle that a lot of gun tubers, I'm not calling anybody out, but I think that a lot of gun tubers have fallen into, where the whole Second Amendment thing is just sort of an aside, where it's like, here's this cool video about this new product from Silencer Co. or EO Tech or Vortex or whatever, and at the very end, oh, and by the way, the Second Amendment's important. See you later, bye.
Yeah.
And that's like, to me, that's like 80% of it. And I just sort of got tired of it after a while. I'm just like, I get it. New shiny thing is cool. I can't afford that though. And half the people watching can't.
Well, and I think especially for the high end YouTubers, right? That's what we get into. And you're right. There is a drain right there, right? There is a drain that gets pulled and you end up circling. You make content to perpetuate your content and to keep your content going. I think that we probably, so again, moving the giant boulder, let's go back there. How do you move the giant boulder? So we keep talking about symptoms. The truth of the matter is I tell people all the time, right now, my advocacy in the city is around getting a decent superintendent of schools in power.
That would be a miracle, I think.
It would be. We almost had one. Did you know that? We almost had a deep conservative. He missed it by about 10 votes. And he's going to run again this next year.
Who's that?
Redheaded guy. I can't think of his name now. I knew the moment I started talking about it, I'd lose his name. But I worked with the guy for years. Give me a minute. I'll have it in a second. But here's the thing. So we have an opportunity to change the education system from the ground up. How much does that move the boulder?
Well, the problem with the education system is that you have the NEA, and I know this because I'm married to a teacher. So the curriculum comes from the very top down, and so what if you elect a local school superintendent? What is he going to do? He's going to change the county curriculum that's handed down to him from the federal government or whatever.
I was homeschooled. I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about.
Right.
You were lucky,
Yeah.
You're one of the
But we get into this habit of saying, because the thing that you can impact is so small, it will not have an impact on the overall process. So 40 years ago is when we started to lose the cultural war in this country. Where did we start to lose it?
Sesame Street. I'm not sure exactly what you're.
Yeah,
the education
we lost
system.
it in the education
I was
system.
say probably starting in the 50s at some point, when I don't know. The thing about it is, you were talking about rolling the ball, getting the ball to two-time
Yeah,
ball rolling. They did it by just nudging it a little at a time
correct.
until it started steamrolling,
Yeah,
and so you can't put a day or a time, a specific time and day to it.
you
It just
start to see
happens.
advocacy in the 1950s to change how
Yeah,
kids are
I
taught
was
in
thinking the
school.
'50s. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, they start destroying the curriculum that teaches federalism to children.
Yeah,
They start destroying the curriculum that teaches blind, and I'm going to say it that way, blind commitment to the United States of America. And everybody likes to point at the last 5 years worth of kids, but that wasn't 5 years worth. That was generations of liberals being raised and then pushed into education positions.
Oh yeah, man, it goes all
Uh,
the way back to FDR with his
that's
reforms of public
correct.
education. It's just ridiculous.
Yes. And so here's the thing. You want to roll that ball, get at least one conservative superintendent in one area and then another and then another. Encourage hiring practices that bring those type of people back into the education system, and at least you'll see less overwhelming push towards socialism. I sent my daughter to a private academy, $7,000 a semester. And she had teachers there pushing ideals behind religions on her that teach hatred towards homosexuals and men and women of different skin color and people of different religious beliefs than themselves. Sending her home with articles of stuff that said these were good places to be.
and it's really, it's funny. It's a shame that in the South, especially, that if it's like Alex went to private school too, and I worked my ass off to do that, and so did his
Yep,
mom.
we all
Um,
did.
that if you do that, then it's 90% of the time it's a religious based school,
That's
right?
correct.
Like Notre Dame, you
Yep.
know, Chattanooga Christian School. A lot of these, even well, I know McCall and Baylor aren't necessarily, but they still have an underlying, the underlying
Yeah.
tone. But so we haven't raised objective thinkers. Unless you've raised them as children, like I've tried to raise my kids. The education system. The problem with the education system, and this is really, and Russell, I know you're probably bored to death about this because you're right. You were lucky you weren't a part of the system. Teachers, by default, are union members, right? And they basically, as union members, you're basically told who to vote for, what the philosophy is, you're told basically to accept the curriculum handed down from the NEA. So it's a total system from top down, and people say that sounds conspiratorial. No, it's not. It's just the system that's been created over the last 50 years, and it works. It works for them.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it's like you've said, this is a process that's been going on for decade after decade after decade. For me, it's even before my great grandfather was alive. I mean, this is a process that we're seeing the results of now, but it's not like this is a brand new thing by any means.
So when you looked at Stephen Vickers' ideas, and sorry, I finally remembered his name. So he was looking towards, what can you do to hire a better quality of neutral teacher, right? What can you do to create an environment where there's just not such an overwhelming influence to these type things that it's impossible to filter the noise for the kids? You know what I mean? It wasn't like the schools were full of liberal kids that came out as liberal kids.
Mhm.
We sent good conservative kids to school and they came out as liberals, and we've got to start somewhere. The ball will never roll unless we start somewhere. So, and somebody asked me the other day, well, I don't like what you've said. So I said, that's fine. Pick a point. Tell me where you want to start. We'll go in there crazy. Teeth and claws and slobber. Let's go. Let's attack. And so the less time we spend debating, whether or not this is the perfect solution. There's an old saying from combat, and that is, you make a decision or you die, right? You make the best decision you possibly can and move forward. Well, we're nearly there. Let's start making decisions before we're at that decision you have to make to survive, right? And we get into 1,000 different directions and 1,000 different debates, but 40 years ago we lost this when we lost the education system, and we're in danger of losing it forever if we don't start taking it back.
There was a guy in the chat who was mocking me, which is fine. I don't care. Whatever you want to say is fine. But when you start attacking people personally, that's when you're gone. I have personal experience. I only speak from personal experience. I went to a building trade school when I was in high school. Okay, for 2 years I learned the building trades. When I left, I had the opportunity to become either a union carpenter or a free man. Okay,
Right.
I had a friend who I went to building trade school with, whose father was in the union. He got me in. You had to basically be invited. This is the problem with the union. Okay, it's a closed society, and you have to go for an interview. The next thing you have to do is pass a test, which is 10 pages of math, nothing about construction. It's done to weed people out, and it's designed to only allow those in that are wanted in. Okay. And then once you're in the union, you go to monthly meetings, you pay your dues, mandatory. Back then, we weren't, I remember you didn't have a choice. You obviously had to pay your dues, right? It wasn't, the term right to work state was not used that much back when I was coming out of high school, okay? You were basically told what to think, who to vote for. This is the policy of the union, okay? So I went for my final interview with the union, and they told me basically this stuff, and I was like, well, what am I going to be doing for work? And they said, you're going to be building basically concrete forms for the majority of the time, because that's what union carpenters do. Union carpenters don't do a lot of residential work in our area. And I said, no, thank you. And they looked at me like I was an idiot.
You didn't take the easy way out. What's wrong with you, Tony?
I went out and started my own framing crew, and that was the history of artisan construction. That was the beginnings of, that was 1980. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and ever since then, I have been biased against unions, but I have known 2 women who were teachers who are in the unions, and I've seen the propaganda that comes down to them. And they're basically expected to walk lockstep. And so, there's my history with the unions. And so forgive me if I have a biased opinion. But the point I was trying to make with the education system is that is the system, that is the conduit. You wonder, you say to yourself sometimes, as a contractor, I say to myself, how am I going to get the power to this point, from one point, from the street to this point in the building? Through conduits, right? And the unions are the socialist conduits for our education system. That's how the curriculums and the philosophies are handed down, and that's why our education system is screwed up. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a.
No.
It's nothing.
Fact.
It's just fact. It's just the way. It's the society that we live in.
So, and I hate to say this because this is valuable and critical, important conversation. So I'm about to do that thing that I hate it when people do. I have to go pay attention to the better half because it is New Year's.
I was actually just about to say the same thing. I got to get going here soon.
I didn't mean to dominate the last part of the conversation.
No, you're good.
It's your show.
I wanted it to be you guys' show because I respect both of your opinions very much.
I work with Jeff. I'm used to it.
But I was kind of hoping, Russell, would you mind coming back sometime?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I've done it once before. I thought it was very fun. I thought it was even more fun this time.
By myself one time, I thought it was very. I couldn't get him onto that edgy stuff. I had a hard time.
Well, you didn't ask the right questions.
I think I was hoping that you, Nighthawk, could get him onto the edgy stuff.
Well, I was just kind of feeling him out a little bit. Remember, I've got some background and some things that he and I are going to throw verbal judo on and are very much going to agree on. So going forward, you don't come into a man's life and just completely call him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Well, I wanted,
later on, we'll have more
I
challenges.
wanted you two to meet each other. A, because I thought you had like minds, and B, you're local. We're all local, and the possibilities are there. And I just thought it'd be cool. And
Yeah, it's been very fun.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
I appreciate it, guys, and hope we can do it in the next few weeks or so. Get together again, and maybe focus in on some kind of on something.
Yeah, I would very much enjoy it.
All right, well, we'll end it here, and thanks for all the people in the chat. I know most of those people, and I appreciate them coming. And I just want to keep it nice, keep the comments. So I didn't ban anybody; they just got timed out. If they want to come back and be nice, that's all. That's all I ask. We're all gentlemen here. We can have discussions and all be friends when we leave. And that's the goal. So,
absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Russell. Thanks, Paul.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate
Thank you, Paul.
it.
Good to meet you.
And
Tony Russell, great to meet you. Tony Russell.
Woo,
tongue-tied.
All right. Well, I'll send each of you your all contact information. That way, if y'all have any kind of want to have any other conversations, you can. But I think that's one thing cool about getting everyone together is meeting new people, like minds. So.
Yeah, well, I'm easy to find anyway.
Yeah. Everybody check out 92.7 on Facebook, because even though you can't get the signal, the FM signal, you can get it on Facebook there. So
I'm deeply offended, but I also agree. Sometimes the signal is crappy.
Well, I'm talking about people like in Afghanistan and
Oh, I see what you mean.
Pakistan,
Okay.
Russia. We have friends in Russia too.
I actually do have a few. Yeah.
Lars, what's his name? Survival Russia guy. He's a good guy. And the guys from Kalashnikov. Talked to a few of those guys.
Oh, very neat.
Yeah, they have a good channel. But
Cool.
anyway, I could drag this out forever, and I better not. So thank you guys, and I appreciate
Yes,
you
sir.
coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.